Hey, Young Turks, I'm Nomi Konst. We are very grateful today to have a special guest, an exclusive on this actually. You may have heard that there is a race in California right now to replace the congressman from California's 34th district, which is in the LA area. It is a heated primary. There are quite a few people there. It's a special election. There's been a lot of attention on this district because it's one of the first races after the presidential race amidst the revolution. And one of the candidates is a man named Arturo Carmona, who was on the Bernie Sanders campaign. He was the Latino outreach director at one point and then was moved up to the position of deputy political director. And he decided to put his hat in the ring in that district and has been running on the label of Bernie-crat. And he has definitely received a lot of the Bernie support, a lot of small dollar donations from Bernie-crats. There are others in the race who are also Bernie supporters but did not work on the campaign. And he's had a lot of endorsements from very well-known unions and political organizations. But in the last 24 hours, things have changed quite a bit. You have had a former Bernie staffer who is joining us today. Her name is Masha Mendieta. She came forward with her story on Medium about sexual harassment on the campaign, and immediately after, several other staffers and surrogates came forward not just with their personal stories of sexual harassment and financial mismanagement, but also of support for Masha. Full disclosure here, even though I am a TYT reporter for TYT Politics, I was a national surrogate for Bernie Sanders, and I personally had heard many of these stories many months before they came forward. And as often is the case in cases of sexism, it takes one person to stand up for others to stand up as well. So I'm going to read a quick piece before I introduce Masha from her piece in Medium. And the title is The Secret Sexism of Arturo Carmona, Candidate for CD 34 in California. She says, quote, "It seems women are always told to wait their turn for elected office, promotion, a raise, respect rights, even for belief in our word. We criticize Sharia law for not allowing women's testimony without corroboration by a man because women are seen as inherently untrustworthy. But in the American social sphere, are we that different? How often do you catch yourself believing the word of a man over that of a woman when it comes to reputation, recounting of events, stating of the facts in conversation? Do you have the extra nagging doubt whenever a woman vocalizes a claim?" And then she goes down a little bit further and she discusses being confronted by one of the staffers for Carmona about some leaks that were about to go forward of sexism. And she says, "I live in Congressional District 34. I'm voting here. We're talking about someone, Arturo Carmona, who would literally represent me. For all of you Bernie-crats in the district who saw the misogyny leaks posts or heard hush rumors but didn't know what to believe, this is for you. For all of the burners in my neighborhoods who sweated blood and tears for our campaign because you believed in the integrity and good-heartedness of Bernie's vision, this is for you. It's all true." Masha, thank you so much for first stepping forward. It's always courageous when a woman steps forward and shares their story, but also, coming to TYT and sharing your story with our audience. Obviously, we have a lot of Bernie people who watch, so I figured I'd give you an opportunity to talk about why you came forward, how it happened. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I've always been a huge fan of TYT. And of course, you would cover this when no other mainstream media would. And that's actually how this came about. One of the things that I do want to address is that, there has been a lot of speculation and kind of claims coming back at me that why did this come out so late in the game? And trust me, that was not my intention. Actually, as soon as he announced in December, because I do live here, I am a resident here in District 34, and I am actually physically voting here. I literally felt sick to my stomach that the man who had made so many of our lives hell during the campaign could actually wind up going and representing me in Congress. And starting in December, I tried to get a story out first with the LA Times.
Interesting.
And that was repeatedly delayed, even though I spoke to them multiple times over the past couple months, gave them contact information for multiple staffers who wanted to talk. and that never went forward. Finally, I tried to take it to the LA Weekly. They declined. I tried to go to other smaller places. They declined. And finally, actually, Jordan Sheridan's offshoot, Truth Against the Machine, I finally saw they launched, and I was like, oh, maybe they will take it. And they just launched, and so I reached out to them, and they actually immediately responded. They did want to take the story, and they were just so overwhelmed because they just, started up that they couldn't get it out in time. And so it was literally Thursday night, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, the time is ticking, and what do I do? Do I not do anything and just let this slide by? And he has a real chance of making it past the primary. And so I sat down and I wrote that Medium piece. I'd never posted on Medium before. I'd never done anything like that before. And I literally just passed out and I shared it. And I, went to sleep at like 5 a.m. And I woke up the next day at like noon, turned on my phone, and, it just had been exploded everywhere. And I never expected that Erica Andiola and Lucy Flores and Juliana DeLauro and later Cynthia Montez, the intern, also came out and made public statements and public support. That was so out of the blue. While I know Erica and Juliana and Cynthia somewhat from back in the day, I don't know Lucy Flores at all. And Juliana and Erica live in DC now, so I never see them. I barely talk to them. And so it was really like just, women coming out to support women when they knew it was true. And so it really touched my heart.
And I will also disclose that Lucy is a friend of mine, and she was a national surrogate as well. And we talked about this months in advance. And so when she came forward with this story, a few other people came forward and said, it was almost as if they had warnings about it through Lucy and other people, but it was muted. And now you have a list of, I'm going to go through the list right now. Ronnie Batrice, who's the deputy campaign manager for Bernie Sanders, came forward and wrote a letter to organizations that have endorsed Arturo Carmona. And these are all people who personally had witnessed his actions or stand with those who they trust and respect. And so you have staffers like Nida Alam, who's a Bernie 2016 staff, Eric Andiola, Sheila Angelo, Rania Batrice, Robert Becker, Becky Bond, Melissa Byrne, who also ran for vice chair of the DNC, Rob Byrne, Arun Chowdhury, who was the creative director for Bernie, Christopher Covert, Lucy Flores was a surrogate, Mark Packer, Magyar staffer. There's a long list, and I've posted them online, but some of the more well-known ones include Susan Sarandon and Nina Turner, as well as Lucy Flores. So
I love, and I must just give a quick shout out, not to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
Susan Sarandon, when I just saw it like an hour ago, I saw the list posted, and I was so pleased to see her name on it. I hung out with her a couple of times throughout the campaign. Actually, the picture that's in that piece where I'm giving a speech about women's rights, right off frame, is Susan Sarandon. And it was really, she was the main event. And it was like one of the highlights of my life to give a speech about women's rights and Bernie with Susan Sarandon. And she was just such a sweet, incredibly intelligent human. And to see her like come out in support of that letter just really meant the world.
Absolutely. So what did you experience? For those who I have to say there's been an immediate response from naysayers, skeptics, and let's not forget a lot of people invested in Arturo Carmona's campaign. They've put money, they've actually gone out there and knocked on doors with the expectation that he's representing the values of Bernie Sanders and the movement. And so sometimes there's that conflict, like, oh, you've invested time and effort and money, and now, this person is not who he laid himself out to be. So what did you experience, and what did others experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt really bad, and I feel really bad about those people, like nationwide and locally, who, especially because they were burners, who came out and donated their time and their money and their effort to support Arturo. And that was what really broke my heart, like through all of this, when, starting back in December, and as I saw his campaign starting to pick up steam, I was watching this amazing volunteer network that we had built as a movement, And because he was riding on Bernie's name, they, rightfully so. Like, I understand absolutely why people thought, oh yeah, let me support him. And it's so, tore me up inside to see them get taken advantage of like that. And that's really why, that's part of the reason it was for them and for all the women and men that Arturo just demeaned throughout, the campaign, and apparently before, during other positions that he had, that Lucy Flores and others mentioned. It was for all of them, because I was just so, sickened by the thought of them getting continually taken advantage of. And so, yeah, absolutely. During the campaign, when I was in his department and he was my direct boss, he was blatantly sexist, blatantly misogynist, and demeaning, like I said, not just to female staff, but to male staff as well. I mentioned that in my article about how literally three of us, it was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like it. Three of us wanted to quit within the first few days of joining the department. Me, within, the first few days of joining, you could ask my husband, back then fiance, I called him up and in tears, and I was just so shocked by the treatment and so shocked by, the atmosphere of like just toxicity that came from Arturo, that I was just like, I don't need to be here. Like, I was telling you that earlier, I canceled my wedding for this. Like, wow. I left my fiance, behind in LA for this. And, a week before our 10-year anniversary, I left him behind. And, because I believed in this movement. And I was like, why am I doing this just to be treated this way? And he talked me down off the ledge and, was like, no, you're there for Bernie. And I agreed. And that's why I stuck it out, because I was there for Bernie, to make a better world for me and my husband and everybody else, and immediately when the next woman was hired, she immediately wanted to quit within a day or two. There was a man hired after that who I literally sat down in Nevada with, and he had a nervous breakdown in front of me in the car because he was so mistreated by Arturo. I mean, it was just a constant pattern of behavior. We'd be in meetings, and if we were meeting, say, grass top leaders or things like that, or local supervols, or especially for, higher up type of surrogates or organization leaders, that kind of thing. It would, the classic thing of never introduce the women, only introduce the men. When he talks, he only looks at the women, never the men.
Or vice versa, the men, not the women.
Yeah, exactly. Always looks at the men and not the women. Whenever he would address a question, it's always at the man. If the woman tried to speak, he'd always interrupt. Very classic things like that. All the way to the egregious of, the way he handled the sexual harassment complaint in Nevada.
So let's talk about that, because there were actions that were taken by staffers to move forward with their complaints, and you report in your piece that they were swept under the bus. And some of the tweets that I've gotten from people who are Bernie supporters and who want to know more are, well, why didn't Bernie and Jeff Weaver know? Or how could they not know? And of course, organizations are dynamic and there's lots of personalities involved and people are human. And of course, a campaign is chaotic. So what happened when someone moved forward with complaints?
Yeah. And just to touch on what you said, because I made a point of saying that in my article, I met Bernie a few times, especially when I was in DC, but not like he would remember me or know me by any means. We had a giant, 500-person staff. Jeff Weaver, same thing. We worked in proximity when I was in DC, because it was a one townhouse office, and he was always respectful to me and very nice. And because I do take these, what I'm saying seriously, these allegations, and for me, what I know is truth. I would never just throw, names out there and accusations and rumors. And I take that very, very seriously. So no, that's why, to my knowledge, Jeff Weaver and Bernie Sanders never knew. And my belief is that had they known, they absolutely would have done something about it. And as far as the sexual harassment complaint, I was there. I witnessed the beforehand, before it was, the sexual harassment happened. I always felt really guilty because I was actually, now it's public knowledge, so I'll use her name. Juliana and I were both assigned to body, kind of, it's called like, we call it bodying. It means like babysitting a surrogate. That day, yeah.
I never got one of those. Let me just say that. They're like, she can handle herself. I wanted a babysitter.
And apparently he needed two. So we were both, and actually my then fiance was also actually, he had also driven in from LA to volunteer for free during that Nevada caucus. And so he was actually also there. And all three of us were bodying him. And I got pulled away on another assignment to go like attend another event. And I left her behind with him. And it was right when I left her behind that he immediately moved in.
Arturo.
And no, the surrogate.
The surrogate, okay.
Yeah, the surrogate that we were bodying. And I don't want to speak to her. Like I said, I don't want to speculate. Like, you can see her post publicly online or ask her if you want about what happened to her. But when she came back, basically she related to me what happened. And what she told me was that, he very inappropriately groped her and touched her on her back and her neck and her hair. And she told him to stop, and he wouldn't stop. And she finally pushed him away and just kind of ran out and left him behind, we're at the location wherever they were, and drove back. That's when we met up. And that's when I can attest that she immediately told me about it. I immediately encouraged her to report it. And I accompanied her for moral support when she went to go report it. And so we went to go report it. And that's when you can see in the article, basically, the response that we got from leadership. And
who in leadership? Who in leadership was this? Just to
at the time it was Arturo was director. And so I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand, but everything stops with him. You are the leader. And his deputy director, who is Bill Velasquez. Okay. We reported it to both of them. And that's when they immediately dismissed it. A joke was made that she would have, I forget his name. We had like a younger surrogate at the time who was also with us, and they made a joke that like she would have enjoyed it. It would have been okay. Like she would have liked it if it had just been the younger surrogate. And I was just like, and that, like I said, that I witnessed. I was standing right there. And I was just so appalled. That is your response to two employees coming to officially, report something to you. And then at that point, Arturo and his deputy left and went out, drinking for the night and going out. That's where it ended. We were both like horrified. But despite his response, still somehow assumed that like, obviously they're gonna, do something about it, right? Even if he thought like, oh, that joke was in poor taste, right? Like best case scenario. But then the next morning, we go for like our assignments, like our morning meeting, and they assigned 2 young female interns to body him instead of us. That was their response. Like, okay, we won't assign you 2, but instead we're going to assign 2 even younger female interns. And we were just appalled. We vehemently objected. And this actually I just found out yesterday. So actually what's in the article I should update because it's wrong. They promised us that they were going to reassign them. And yesterday I found out because the intern came out publicly that they actually never did. They lied to us. They never did reassign them. They did have to body him and drive him around that day. And later when they found out about like the sexual harassment complaint and everything, they were so like horrified and traumatized by the fact that leadership didn't care enough about them to protect them that day. And you can read in her post, she says, like, would you have let your daughter drive around with him? And it's like, no, you wouldn't.
And that's pretty classic too, that, the younger they are, the women are, in this is just how history sort of reflects these situations, they have more at risk professionally. Their fears of being reprimanded, losing their jobs, and of course, when you're a younger woman, you're more vulnerable. You're not as established in your careers. And so that's why oftentimes in these big sexual harassment cases, it's when a woman has leverage and has built their career strong enough and has enough money or resources to be okay if shit hits the fan. So that's, I think, what's really fascinating about this situation is I personally know several people my age who experienced sexual harassment by Arturo. And this is, this is a personal situation here. So to see somebody who's even younger than some of my personal colleagues and friends who've expressed these things to me come forward, I think is pretty tremendous. I mean, you're a young woman, and there's a lot on the line, and of course, the campaign is over, and so he's not your boss anymore, but he is running for Congress, and I have been pretty open about how I feel about situations of sexual harassment, and when you have countless women come forward, and many who still haven't yet, that you and I are probably both aware of, there's a history of this. We know now how this works, whether it's Fox News or the mayor of San Diego. I mean, there is a long history of how this works. It's not a one-off sort of situation. So, I mean, what has their response been to you? Because you mentioned in the piece that they reached out to you before you even came out publicly.
Who?
The Carmona's campaign.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting because that's actually what triggered me to write that piece. Because hence why before that, for months, I was trying to get a news publication to take the story. Because, like you said, trust me, I know the history of how, women get treated when they come out for this stuff. And literally, I consulted multiple colleagues on this, and all of them were like, you do understand, though, that if you come out, like, there goes any career you wanted in politics, like, up in flames. And I was like, and these are friends, and it's legit. I mean,
because of Arturo Carmona, he's not Bernie. He's not.
No, not because. I mean, Arturo Carmona absolutely has a reputation, and multiple people have warned me of retaliation from him. But no, it speaks to deeper question of what you were saying. It's despite all the amount of people who've come out to support, right, in the political sphere, even just personally with private messages. The truth of the matter is, a year from now, if I call them up for a recommendation or a job, it won't happen. And that's the sad truth. And the fear of that happening, of that response, is exactly what keeps women, and the multiple women, like you said, the multiple women that I talk to on the phone behind closed doors about this, from coming out, because this is their livelihoods. This is their careers. What else are they supposed to do? They're the ones who are always ostracized and always pushed to the side. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just crazy enough. I don't know. I happen to have
crazy. You're standing for yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. But I happen to have a very supportive, husband. I call him my mate. I have a very supportive mate, who, would always stand behind me, and, worst case scenario, would always have my back. But not everybody has that, that moral support, that physical support. And it's, that's the tragedy of it. So, the response is real. It really is. And while I've gotten a lot of support coming out in the last 24 hours from people that have really touched my heart, the silences have also been deafening. And, the backlash from strangers has also been very surprising. Also very tame. I do want to say that compared to what I feel like usually happens in these cases, I am really, really happy and proud to see how a lot of the Bernie community has been treating this. Not completely, not say Carmona's most ardent supporters and volunteers, but the rest of the community, they really did do their due diligence in waiting it out, seeing the second more people came out and all of that happened, they were like, okay, I'm out. And I really appreciate
Democracy for America came out today and made a statement that they're rescinding their endorsement of Arturo Carmona. And I think there's names that are coming out regularly along with the list of names that I mentioned before. Political revolution, exactly. You have endorsed somebody in this race. Is this a group of? There's been a retaliation. There's been a lot of response online saying, "Oh, this is just this is an agenda cast by people who are supporting another candidate." But when I looked at the list of names that criticized Carmona's actions, there are a lot of people on that list who support different candidates in this race. Who are you supporting in this race?
Actually, I don't want to say because of exactly that. I am voting for somebody else. And obviously I never was going to vote for Arturo. And I want people to understand that from my point of view, I live here and like I actually have to vote, right? It's not just me living in another district throwing my vocal support out for somebody. I actually have to cast a ballot. And I knew I was never, ever going to vote for Carmona. And I did my due diligence. I reached out to the different campaigns that, after I filtered, because there's 23 candidates. So after I filtered it a little bit, I reached out where I could. I went to different events. And I tried to pick from there. In my opinion, no, there is no Bernie candidate in this race, meaning somebody that I will ever trust like I trusted Bernie, right? Who has this like history behind them of authenticity. That was a once in a lifetime candidate. And I'm back to voting on pros and cons. And, I don't like this, but I like that about you.
Right.
And if I did do this to support my candidate, then I'd be saying their name right now, and I'm not, because I don't want to have this associated with this. This has nothing to do with who I'm voting for. It has, and who everybody else is voting for the other candidates. This has everything to do with Arturo's behavior. And like you mentioned, actually the people who have come out publicly support at least 3 different candidates that I know. So it has nothing to do with that, from coming from a candidate's campaign or a coordinated effort to, take him down politically. Is not. I've been accused of being establishment now. And what
does that even mean?
Of being a DNC establishment, like hack, spy. And I was like, if you knew my life, you would know how so anti-establishment I am. Like, I literally refer to myself as fringe class. Like, me and my husband live a whole other, kind of radical life that is absolutely not establishment. So,
well, you don't. I mean, I get that too. It's become a go-to response. And listen, ask the establishment if you're establishment, and that should answer the question. I guess there's only a couple more questions I have for you, but one is for the naysayers who want evidence. What evidence do you have? What is that important? What is evidence in a sexual harassment situation, and where do you go from here on that?
Yeah. So actually, a couple of points on that. One, I was very clear with the reporters that I spoke to beforehand, and I'll be clear now that it's not that me or to my knowledge that any of the other women are coming out and asking for anything criminal or civil or suits or. Or even like say we were still in HR, and we're asking for his company to remove him from the HR department. Like, we're not asking for any official action being taken that way. This is us speaking to the Bernie-crats and us speaking to the public so that people know about his reputation and his behavior and can judge him accordingly. That's what it's about. I don't understand why the immediate response is always, whether it's a rape case or a sexual harassment case, or honestly even something not sexism related, but it's a female coming out and saying it, the response is always to just attack their credibility. And, where's your evidence? It's, you always have to have a binder full of, something in black and white to back up what you're saying if you're a woman, and it's especially if it's sexism. But you don't see that with other claims. You don't see that when a man comes out. You don't see that when, a candidate is attacked of doing something else that is bigotry or another ism. And, I think that's so telling, and that's really unfortunate. But for those of you who do want evidence, if, 6 women now and counting who have come out publicly to support this, what is the magic number there? I mean, is it 60? Is it like the Bill Cosby number? Like, how many women have to come out before you decide, that's enough that it equals, a credible testimony? But there's an email that proves that conference call that I talked to, that Erica and Juliana both confirmed did occur and that they were on it. There's an email that shows us coordinating that conference call with Rich, Rich is
Rich Pelletier.
Yeah, Rich Pelletier.
Carmona's boss.
Yeah, who was Carmona's boss, national field director before he also got removed. And he came out apparently and, categorically denied it and said these are all lies and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you can look up his tweet. And there's an email getting leaked that exactly contradicts you. It's like how much more evidence do you need? Like, did you think that people who are racist or sexist or any, xenophobic, homophobic are ever going to go into an email and be like, I hate you because you are a woman. That is, what level of evidence standard are we asking for here? And the other disturbing thing that I've seen, and you kind of are alluding to that, is that I've seen this kind of, backlash that it shouldn't matter because he's not being accused of committing a sexual crime.
Right.
And that is the most disturbing part to me, because these are comments coming from Bernie-crats, self-proclaimed progressives, and you're saying that sexism is okay, harassment is okay, of both females and males, as long as it stops short of rape.
Right.
I don't understand.
Provable rape, nonetheless.
Yeah, provable rape, exactly.
Which
provable
is
rape.
Incredibly
Yeah,
rare.
as long as I didn't, because even if that, exactly, say he did do something like that without a picture or a video, you still wouldn't believe it. So that has been the most disturbing thing, unfortunately.
And that's why so many states, and I want to make this very clear for our audience, that's why so many states, and New York, where I am, actually has some really progressive legislation around this. They look to the victim first. And there is a history of how victims come forward and share their experiences. There's a pattern, and there's a pattern of how perpetrators, those who are being accused, who are guilty, defend themselves. And so there's a lot of reform in this area, but they tend to lean on the victim, as long as they obviously question the victim extensively. And usually, when you have 6 women come forward it's been 18 hours since you've come forward, as of today, on Saturday, April 1st, not to mention several staff members who corroborate, who validate what you have said, who have witnessed it, who support you, including surrogates. This is part of that pattern that makes it so that these cases can be, brought forward, at least in sexual assault cases. Mm-hmm. Masha, thank you. Thank you for coming forward with your story. It is incredibly courageous, and I hope that our audience understands that to come forward and share your story, especially in a professional setting, is a risk. And I believe that women who stand for these things should be supportive of other women who stand up. You have no ulterior motive at this point. You're not looking for a job anywhere. You're not on a campaign. You literally just got off of your honeymoon. So I appreciate it, Masha. Thank you very much.
And I do want to say that it really warmed my heart that when I woke up the next day and I saw the response, this was a giant testament to women coming out for women and having each other's backs. And contrary to popular belief, women do have each other's backs, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. And men also did come in support and gave me encouraging messages. But the people who came out publicly, they were all women, and that says a lot.
Thank you, Masha.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Nomi Konst. We were here with Masha Mendieta for TYT Politics. Thank you, guys.